City of Plymouth Planning Commission regular meeting for Thursday, February 17th, 2022. It's 6:30 p.m. And let's go ahead and first take roll call.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Ozer is not present. I don't see him on Zoom. Commissioner Moreno,
Present.
Vice Chair Sullivan,
Present. Chair
Clapper.
Present.
Thank you.
All right, let's all stand so we can have flex. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everybody stand by. Just to read the, here comes one additional commissioner. We'll just pause for 1 minute. For those in the listening audience, I'll go ahead and read our COVID advisory statement. Pursuant to Assembly Bill AB 361, this meeting will be held in person and electronically. In-person participation by the public is permitted, and remote electronic public participation is available in the following ways. You can join the Zoom meeting with a link provided, or by dialing in by phone 1-669-900-9128. Members of the public participating electronically via this link and wishing to speak may do so during public comment using your raise the hand feature in the Zoom webinar. When dialing in by phone, use *9 to raise and lower your hand and *6 to mute and unmute your phone. Thank you. Written comment cards can be given to the Planning Commission Secretary prior to the start of the meeting. Comments can also be submitted via email to the.united.city.of.plymouth.org before 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting. All comments will be distributed to the Planning Commission and made part of the official minutes. Let's go ahead and add to the roll call if you want to just officially put that on the record.
All right,
No one co-started.
thank you.
All right. Excellent, welcome, Mel, good to have you. So first item is the approval of the Planning Commission regular meeting agenda for February 17th, 2002. Do I have a motion to approve the regular meeting agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the regular meeting agenda.
All right, do I have a second?
Stephanie Moreno, I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let's go ahead and take a roll call vote.
All right. Commissioner Ozer,
Yes.
Commissioner Moreno,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sullivan,
Yes.
Chair Clapper.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we will go ahead and move to just general public comment. This would be for items that aren't on the standard agenda. So if there's members of the public in person or on the phone, again, just a reminder, if you're on the phone, you can raise your hand. If you're calling in, press the *9 to raise and lower your hand, *6 to unmute your phone. So we'll go ahead and open it up for any public comment for items not on the standard agenda. Going once. Going twice. All right, we'll move on. There aren't any presentations on the agenda, so we'll move to the consent calendar items. So item 5.1, which is the approval of the Planning Commission regular meeting agenda minutes from January 20th, 2021. Any comments by the commissioners before we make a motion to approve those minutes?
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Moreno. I have some recommended changes to the minutes.
Please proceed. Thank you.
So on page 2, under public hearings, the sentence that starts with Planning Director Ventura spelled out the suggested minor changes to chapter 19.84 for the record. Aaron can correct me if I'm incorrect, but I think these are the minor changes that happened in between the last Planning Commission meeting and that Planning Commission meeting. And I thought we should just spell that out, that these were changes that had not previously been discussed by the Planning Commission. It's not all of the changes. It was just the ones that we hadn't yet discussed.
So, go ahead. Stephanie, could you just direct us where the change was going to be?
It's on page 2, under public hearings, 6.1, the sentence that begins Plymouth Planning Director Ventura spelled out the suggested minor changes to chapter 19.84 for the record. If you just wanted to put the suggested minor changes that are in addition to those made by the Planning Commission at the last meeting for the record. Because these are ones that we had talked about afterwards. They were minor things, taking the word permanent out, changing temporary to administrative use. They were just cleanup language for inconsistencies in the code that were discovered.
Okay, so adding the comments made at the last meeting.
Right, that we hadn't previously seen them. And then the second correction is on page 3, under reports, Planning Director report, second paragraph. I had asked if there was a cost savings to bunching public hearings in order to save on notices in the newspaper, not on how to bunch public hearing notices.
Okay, so it says at the last meeting, Commissioner Moreno asked if there's a cost savings to bunching public hearing notices in the newspaper.
Yeah, and it should say bunching public hearings in single meetings in order to save on public hearing notices in the newspaper. So I wasn't trying to just bundle notices. I was trying to actually have more public hearings on our agenda at the same time. And I thought that would be easier for notice requirements.
Okay, Dana, did you get that?
I'll have to re-listen to it.
Okay. So basically just expand that to say, bunching public hearings in meetings versus notices. Okay. Any additional comments?
That was all that I had.
Excellent. Do I have a motion to adopt the approval of the Planning Commission regular meeting agenda minutes of January 20, 2021 as amended?
I'll move that.
I'll second.
Let's take a roll call vote.
All right, Commissioner Kozar,
Yes.
Commissioner Moreno,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sullivan,
Yes.
Chair Claprock.
Yes.
Thank you, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 6, public hearings, and specifically 6.1, which is to adopt a resolution 2022-02 of the Planning Commission of the City of Plymouth, recommending the City Council approve amending the general plan land use designation and rezone properties located at 18725 Highway 49, APN 010-062-001 and APN 010-062-002. So first I'll open it up to the planning director to get some commentary, then we'll open it up for public comments and then take some commissioners' comments.
Yes, thank you, Chair and Planning Commission. So tonight, in front of you is an application, as the Chair explained, for just the redesignation of both the general plan land use designation and the zoning designation. There is a second portion of this project, which is a lot line adjustment that has been conditionally approved by the city engineer. That is an administrative process. It's not a process that goes to the Planning Commission. And kind of before I get more into this, Commissioner Sullivan had some great questions that I able to respond to and provide some clarification. And so though that information will be interweaved into my oral presentation tonight, and I actually have a few visuals and maps that Dana will help put on the screen. So I just wanted to get that into the record regarding that information. So since this, so the lot line adjustment has been conditionally approved by the city engineer. So at this time, there is no physical development being proposed on the property, and I know that was kind of confusing. They are seeking only the entitlements for the property. The gas station as it currently exists is a non-conforming use. The gas stations are not allowed in the village commercial zoning district. And so even though they are proposing to have that front portion of the property rezoned, actually Dana, if you could pull up the maps for me. Makes it a little bit easier to talk about. How I'm going to refer to the parcels as the existing lot 1 and existing lot 2, which you can see here. Stephanie, are you able to see that at home?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
And then, because I believe what made it confusing is I was continuing to refer to these as portions of the existing lots are going to be rezoned or redesignated. So then the new lots are the resultant lots 1 and 2. So Dana, if you could switch to those, I think this makes it much more clear. So that I can't see it from here. Resultant lot 1, which is the lot that fronts on Main Street, will remain the same. With the existing general plan designation and existing zoning designation, which is the village commercial zoning. The tasting room that is there will remain in. It is a conforming use to that zoning designation. The gas station is a non-conforming use. So they are able to maintain that. They are not able to expand upon it or move it or do anything else really to it. The resultant lot number 2 rezones to suburban commercial, both general plan designation and zoning designation. That allows for different uses that would be allowed either outright, conditional with an administrative use permit or a conditional use permit. And that information was provided in the packet. I also have the chart up in this presentation. I know it's kind of hard to see. So there are some additional uses that are allowed in that zone that were not allowed when it was zoned village commercial. And I think just continuing to reiterate and remember that there is no physical project. The physical project, if and when it comes back, will come to the planning commission and the city council for review and approval. That corner property is a prominent corner within the city, and it is the historic downtown district on one side and the scenic highway corridor on both. So there's additional review requirements for that. So to kind of reassure people that they will get a look and a review of the project when there is actual project. So again, just the entitlements. I think the majority of the other information is in the staff report, and I can answer questions about that with the findings are in the staff report. I've also included a revised resolution in conversation with Commissioner Sullivan. And I realized there were some things that needed to be clarified in there, and so I appreciate you having that conversation with me so we can get those clarifications in there, adding additional exhibits A and B, or both exhibits, which are identifying what the general plan and zoning maps will look like, which is the colored map, and then the black and white one, which is the identifying the resulting the lots. What else? There was a few typographical errors in the resolution that we cleaned up, and I added the dates of the conditionally approved lot line adjustment. I believe that's about it that was added to the resolution. So I know Commissioner Moreno has some questions about the changes in the resolution. So, and also for the record, I did reach out to Commissioner Moreno regarding some misinformation she had. I wanted to provide an opportunity to answer questions or clarifications, and I did not hear back regarding that. So I can answer any questions. Like I said, I know this is kind of a
I have a
confusing.
question,
Okay.
clarification. Being as I've got a better map to look at now.
Uh-huh.
There was discussion that the existing gas station is going to be moved, is that right?
So I see how that's confusing because their application has that information on it. That's what they may propose one day. In my correspondence with the applicant and in their, a letter dated to them, let's see. In August, I clarified what we saw the application as, is this is just entitlements. And that if they choose to build something along the future, or in the future, I spelled out what they may have to go through, so. There is no physical development happening on this site at this time.
Another clarification question. I think that was a good explanation. So the current zoning of the two parcels. We have the tasting room, which is conforming. We have the gas station, which is non-conforming. That doesn't change. You're still gonna be on that same, a parcel in the future if it's approved to move ahead to the city council. And they still would have the conforming and non-conforming use just as they are today.
Yes,
No change to that.
no change to that. That was one of Commissioner Sullivan's questions was, why would we do this when we still have a non-conforming use? So a non-conforming use can continue to exist as long as it exists. We just would never allow expansion of it. As you can see, that gas station is pretty small. I don't know that it's serving the needs of the community, or it could better serve the needs of the community, being larger, providing more services there. But it can't,
But at
it
this
can't exist
time,
that way.
it's not part of this
Nope.
discussion, because really,
If the city
that
council,
stays the same.
if you approve this, recommend it to the city council and the city council approves it, nothing will change out there currently, nothing right now. This would not, but in the future, it would allow for them to pursue additional type of developments.
Okay, so any other clarification? So I know we're gonna get into a lot of discussion about kind of the process maybe and that type of thing. Any clarification items that would help the public before we open it up for public comment? Before we get into the detail after public comment?
Yes, Vice Chair Sullivan, I have some questions. So you mentioned, Aaron, that it would, anything built there with it, that the change in the zoning would come before this commission, correct?
Yes,
Okay, so maybe I'm reading this wrong. I see 12 things, 12 types of developments that could go on that property if this zoning changes. And of those 12, 10 only require either AUP or P, which means administrative use permit or permitted, entitled. So it seems that 10 of those 12 would just be done by either you or if this was years down the line after you retire, whoever, is in your position. So am I correct that 10 of those 12 might or might not, or maybe wouldn't come before the commission?
so in the municipal code, we have a design review portion, and because they are scenic highway and downtown, historic downtown, additional design review requirements are required. So, for example, let's see. Anything over 5,000 square feet, no, for a major design review, so there are additional design review requirements for these types of structures.
But for the use permit, only 2 of them. So we've got animal hospital and boarding, auto sales rentals, building,
All
yard maintenance, all that kind of stuff. All those 12, only 2 of those for a use permit would come back.
yes, for the actual use and not the physical building.
To build, I think to clarify, to build something would have to come before the commission of the council. The intended use could come after that subject property is built.
Yes.
Okay, but so it would just be subject to design review, the other thing. but not, I would not come here as an easement. Okay, got it.
All right, any other clarifications before we move to public comment?
Yes, I have some questions.
Commissioner Moreno.
So the misinformation that Aaron referred to was actually obtained by me after a call to the State of California Office of Planning and Research. So I don't really like that referred to as misinformation. Could be a difference of opinion. But OPR indicated to me that general plan amendments are projects by state law, and referred me to resources on their website. I found 2 court cases that indicated that general plan amendments are projects. And just because something's not being built doesn't mean that it's not a project. And so I'd like to hear, I referred that to Rex earlier today. I got an email back from him that Aaron would explain that at the Planning Commission meeting. So that was the first question, if we could answer that first.
Yes, so I not only checked with our city attorney and our CEQA attorney, and this was the so the court cases that Commissioner Moreno cited, one I believe was from 1979. I'm not sure the other one was in the early 1990s. So what they're saying is they do recognize that these are projects under CEQA. I'm just going to read directly. We recognize they are projects under CEQA as the cases state, but that is merely step 1 in the analysis. And in 1979, the date of one of those cases, CEQA was new and it was a novel question whether CEQA applied. We know it applies and don't dispute that, but we have determined it's exempt from further CEQA review for those reasons. So what the city attorney is telling me is, yeah, those court cases help to show that this is a project, and the project was reviewed and is found to be exempt.
Okay, so
Okay,
Good
so
that we have attorneys
if I
go
could
through that.
respond to that, the quote that you made was about a different kind of case. So the 2 cases were related because the 94 case referred to the 79 case, but you quoted from something that didn't have to do with the general plan amendment. It had to do with I believe it was a review of a rent control ordinance. So the part where the Supreme Court or the appellate court ruled that a general plan amendment was a project subject to CEQA was very clear. It was just said that into the record.
yeah, I think what you're saying that the guidance from the attorney, both the city and CEQA attorney, indicated this is the proper process and procedure that we're doing.
Yes, and that step 1 is determining whether a project is a project under CEQA or not, and that is what those cases are saying. And we did determine this was a project under CEQA, and that it's an exempt project under CEQA.
Okay. All right, we're ready to open up for public comment. All right, let's go ahead and open it up for public comment. Anybody in the audience or online? Again, if you're online listening, you can go ahead and raise your hand. If you're on the Zoom, I do see some Zoom users out there. There's a raise your hand feature. We'll take your question, or if you're in the audience, feel free to approach and.
We do have the applicant here.
Oh,
We
okay.
have additional questions for him.
Would you like to make any comments or?
I'd be,
Totally up to you.
The button in the front. Yep.
And just introduce yourself and.
I'm Lance Jaggers, I'm the managing partner of this project, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
All right, thank you.
Mike Sullivan, Mr. Jaggers, so you've reached out to me before, so I know the answer to this question already, because you told me, but I want to make sure the folks here know. You guys have no plan to develop this site, correct?
You're good. No, just talk.
Okay, at the time we purchased it, we did. It was pre-COVID, we had a different group of partners. 3 of the partners have had major life changes in this period of time, and so our number 1 focus in this was to figure out how to get that gas station off the corner. and make the property into something special. We feel that this application makes that possible, still makes that possible without us developing. So
So you're essentially kind of teeing it up for a sale.
yes, we're put in a position where the city still has complete overview of whatever happens there, so that whatever project is presented goes through all the channels it needs to go through.
Right, thank you.
All right, any other questions for the applicant? Any other questions for the applicant?
I'll think about it.
Okay, yeah, and it sounds like you'll be here, so we'll ask you if something comes up.
There was something I was gonna ask, but I don't know what it is right now, so I gotta refresh my memory.
Maybe after the discussion starts. Do we have any other public comment that would like to speak?
Jamie Levinko, Prospect Sellers. I had a question. I'm looking at my phone and I feel like a terrible teenager in the back row because I can't see what you guys have on the screen, so I'm trying to watch on my phone. Is there a packet that you guys have a copy of the packet here? That would be great. Oh, well, thanks, my name was you. I'm sorry. I just wanted to acknowledge that because I got questioned. So like,
Really small, yeah.
thank you.
The maps in your.
And I was curious what TUP is.
A temporary use permit.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other public comment? Please approach.
Hi, I'm Chantal Crowley. I bought the main building down the street, and I know I came in and talked with Karen about rezoning it. And I just came here tonight to see how the process goes. A lot of the buildings in this area's changed, and so I want to make sure that my purchase of the building, my plans for in a couple of years, I am gonna rezone, or apply to rezone for my building also. And I just wanted to see how the process goes.
Well, thank you for your involvement. Good to have you, and love to see any public come out or online, just to understand the process, right? It's I think we all learn at the same time as we go through each of these. Thank you for your comments. Any other comments, either online or in person? All right, we'll go ahead and just open it up as commissioners, just for any other questions, discussion around the project. We'll go ahead and start. Mel, do you have any other questions or concerns you'd like to bring forth?
There was some discussion about some of these parcels. Is it already planned that they are wanting to change it so that it complies, or is that just throwing it that it will have to be done ultimately?
I think the question's around like where the gas station is non-conforming. Does this require that to change?
Yeah, is it just indicating that it's an existing, or with us changing any of this and lot 2 being clarified quite a bit different from what it was before, can be utilized a lot different than it was before. Does any of this have to be brought before the public, or do we have to do anything with any of the existing facilities that are on the parcels?
So no, the existing facilities get to just stay and maintain as they are. But like I said, the gas station, it can't change. It can't get larger as it currently sits because it's non-conforming. And even if this zone change goes through, it will still be non-conforming. The Prospect Sellers, that building is conforming, that use is conforming there. The certain things, the majority of the building that could potentially happen here will come through design review. that will come to planning commission and city council, potentially from the majority of them from what I just briefly looking at the code here. And so when there's actual development, physical development, that will come back to the planning commission. Does that answer your question, Mel?
Yes, thank you. I just didn't know if any of this was changing the door for the person that owns the property, or it's clearing up the background, but it's not really affecting them directly at any changes we make now. It would still have to be through the review, through the process, and everything else. Thank you.
All right, good question. All right, Commissioner Sullivan, any additional questions or concerns?
Definitely have some kudos and some concerns, but I had two concerns looking at the packet. One was that the description of the resolution with regard to the lot line changed, because I didn't see how that made sense, and it makes sense now. What you redid is great. That's fantastic. So I appreciate that. I also appreciate Mr. Jaggers wanting to set us up for better development possibly of that area. And I do appreciate that. And I appreciate your investment in the city, but I do have some concerns. So doing this essentially takes that piece of land that in our exhibit here is red and permits a bunch of uses that weren't permitted before. So it allows an animal hospital or animal boarding, auto sales or rentals, building, yard materials, car wash, emergency shelter, equipment rental yard, gas or propane sales, liquor store, restaurant with a drive-through, funeral parlor, warehouse, self-storage, or convalescent facility. And my concern is if Mr. Jaggers was coming in here and said, we want to build this specific thing, and I was looking at a development proposal, I'd be far more comfortable with this, because then we could talk about the use permits and design review at that point based on what we had. Right now, what it seems that we're doing is opening the door for a lot of unknowns. So if they sell the property to somebody who wants to do, who shares their vision and wants to do what they want, that's great. But we have no guarantees of that. So essentially, we're kind of teeing it up for him and his group, and possibly teeing it up for a buyer who wants to do the right thing. But we could also be teeing this up for a minefield from other developers or other buyers who might want to put in a big McDonald's with a drive-through that maybe the people of this town don't want, or a huge car wash with a gas station. It was kind of timely that there was an article in yesterday's Sacramento Bee about a sort of similar but dissimilar situation in Sacramento, where the city had an agreement with the developer to rezone an area, put in a gas station, and along with a strip mall, a safely anchored strip mall. And the city ended up on an appeal from the neighborhood, because the plan of the gas station had changed it, turned into a fuel center that was like 8 pumps with 16 hoses and all this other stuff. The neighborhood had appealed the planning commission's use permit to the city council, and the city council denied it. The city council spent 2 point some odd million fighting this lawsuit since then, $2.3 million. And the developer is filing another lawsuit against the city for money that he's lost and his tenants have lost on having a gas station in there. And one word that came up in this was that this zoning change is an entitlement, and that's part of the argument in that Sacramento case, where they're arguing that zoning change was made with the idea of putting in that gas station, and it didn't happen, and so now he's entitled to put his gas station there however he wants it, and that's the lawsuit that's going on. Granted, part of that also has to do with the way the city followed procedure, but it's kind of similar. We're kind of opening up a door to something that we may not want, and that's my concern. And I know Mr. Jaggers, when we talked to you, mentioned that you would want to sell it to somebody who had your same vision and wanted to do what we want. But what guarantees do we have of that? That's my biggest concern.
for anything to happen on that property other than what's there. Okay, the owner is gonna have to approach the city with an overall plan. You guys hold the keys to the castle. I think in the case that you're talking about, there was a development agreement, which is a specific contract with specific performance on both sides. That's a different situation than this.
Right, we don't even have that here, that's.
Exactly, so you don't have the city doesn't have the obligation to approve anything there that they don't want to. In that case, they did, they had they were required by the development agreement that they initiated to do a specific thing, which they didn't do, or that's what created that litigation. That isn't the case here. You guys are gonna get to look at whatever anyone wants to do there. And it's gonna be an improvement over what it is now. You know, that's the thing. You guys are gonna have a chance to look at it and say, this is what we want, negotiate back and forth. It's the process. So we're setting it up for you guys to be able to do that with whoever goes forward with that property.
That helps. One other concern I had or question was for Ms. Ventura with the design review. What specifically does the code say design review is supposed to look at?
So for major design review, any commercial or multifamily development involving more than 5,000 square feet of floor area, which is not exempt, another title. And then facade remodels of commercial, industrial, institutional, residential development that affect more than 75% of the linear feet of the building front facade and involve multi aspects of the building, i.e. windows, siding, doors. And so that goes to the planning commission in a public hearing.
So that just has to do with the design of the building, not the use of
Yes.
the building.
Any other questions? Let's go to Commissioner Moreno. Any additional questions or concerns?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I actually didn't get to ask all my questions earlier. I was cut off, but I would like to ask a number of questions and make some statements into the record. First of all, it's my understanding that design review doesn't include CEQA. Is that correct, Erin?
So design review doesn't, it would be CEQA.
Design review does not trigger CEQA. Is that correct?
No, but a project, depending on what the project is, the physical project, that may trigger CEQA.
Okay, so CEQA only is triggered if it's not a permissive use already, because the assumption is that if it's a permissive use in the code, that it's already been gone through CEQA in the general plan zoning process. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
So if something is permissive in the code, this is kind of a follow-up to what the applicant also said. Something's permissive, a P on the list in the code, that means they're entitled to do that without any further reviews of CEQA or any kind of use permit. Is that correct?
That means that they're entitled to do that, but it may still be considered a project under CEQA.
So
I don't think that if it's a permitted use, they don't have to come for a use permit, so there'd be no trigger for CEQA. And if they're coming in for a building permit, building permits are exempt from CEQA. Isn't that correct?
So
No.
let me just clarify, I'm just not familiar with CEQA, but I don't know how would that influence this decision?
And she can clarify if I'm incorrect. I think what her concern is if we make these changes now, that they will be able to skirt CEQA in the future, which is not true. A project, when we have a development project, even if it's permitted or not, will still require CEQA review. All projects require CEQA review. One, to determine if they're a project or not, and then you determine the level of review that is required. For example, if they were to put a larger gas station in, with bigger tanks and all of that, that would require secret review because there could then be that potential environmental impact there.
So, post this, if this were to move ahead and there was a project proposed, we would determine at that point if CEQA was required.
Yes.
So this doesn't exempt a future decision on that.
If I could state my own comments and assertions rather than have them misinterpreted, I'd appreciate it.
That's a good question. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm not
I'm just
worried
sorry.
about anyone skirting CEQA. I'm worried about the city not following the established CEQA process. And when you do a general plan amendment and a zoning change amendment that increases the intensity of uses on a property, those intensity of uses need to be studied then because they may or may not be studied later. For example, if this passes, somebody could put a convalescent home on this property without any kind of permit, any administrative use permit or any conditional use permit. Design review doesn't trigger CEQA. And it's interesting that Erin said that she said all projects require CEQA. I wrote that down as she said it, because a general plan amendment and a zoning change are a project. So she's being contradictory or inconsistent in what she's saying about when projects require CEQA. I am only concerned about the process. I think it's wonderful that the applicants want to develop this property and make the downtown area more vibrant. But I also am concerned that if we don't follow the process, that the residents in town will miss their opportunity to be heard about any potential environmental impacts, because some of these uses will be allowed just by Erin saying they're okay. They're not going to come to Planning Commission. Or they won't even have to go to Erin. They can just pull a building permit and they have the permission to do it. So I'd like to have the environmental impacts studied before the zone change and general plan amendments are done. And that's why it's easier for an applicant and less expensive for an applicant if the project is actually linked to the general plan and zoning change, because then the only uses that have to be studied for CEQA are the ones that they're actually proposing, rather than the most intense uses on the property. That's my point. I'm concerned that the city is not following the process.
Noted. Any other concerns or questions?
Yes, I'm concerned. Did I understand Jamie LeBanco to say that you do not have the screen up for people in the public to see the maps that you're talking about?
She asked if she could see the package, which I believe you were given the package, and
Okay,
she
but
could
you
see-
don't have the maps up on the screen for people in the public to see from their seats?
They were here, the video was facing forward, and I think the public was given an opportunity to see them. But if the public would like to see the maps or see a package, we can certainly get that as well. But
Okay.
Jamie had requested the package, we gave the package.
Okay, I'd like to know what state and local agencies you notified that we were doing a general plan amendment and zoning change. Can you just tell me what those are?
There were none. We did a public hearing notice for the code.
Okay, I'd like to know if you consulted with the Native American tribes regarding the general plan amendment as required by the government code.
No.
Okay, regarding the existing facilities exemption, if the resultant lot, the southerly resultant lot is the only one subject to the general plan and zone change, it does not have any facilities on it. Is that correct? The northern lot is not being general plan or zone change, correct?
The resulting lot one remains as it is today, and conforming, non-conforming with the current uses.
Right,
The
so,
resulting lot two would have date change.
so the existing facilities that are being used to justify the CEQA exemption are not on the lot that is subject to the general plan and zone change. Is that correct?
Well, they partially are because the lot line adjustment is conditioned upon the approval of the land use designation and zoning change.
But you said the northern lot where the buildings are going to remain with the same zoning and general plan designation.
Yes, but as the lots stand today, because this lot line adjustment has not been filed, both existing lot 1 and 2 have existing facilities on them.
And then I'd like to read into the record what the court case actually said that I sent to Aaron earlier. It's the city of Santa Ana versus the city of Garden Grove. Just because cases are old doesn't mean they've been overturned, as you know. And that's why I sent it, to see if there was any changes to these court cases, since this is what I was referred to. And what this says is, this is the appeals court for California. We conclude that the adoption or amendment of a general plan is a project which is subject to CEQA, and that section 15037 subdivision A1 of the guidelines so providing is valid. So I just want to read that into the record. So I am concerned. I share some of the concerns Mike Sullivan expressed earlier. I, again, am not opposed to changing this general plan or zoning. I just want it done correctly. I want the public to know what's in front of them, what environmental impacts may come from having a convalescent home or an auto repair or an auto sales or an emergency shelter on this property. Because any of those could, if this property were sold, a new owner may not be as conscientious about meeting what the town would like to see. And so I am opposed to the fact that we are doing this without CEQA and not following the process. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and make some final comments because there are the other commissioners have commented. I've seen this done in the Sacramento and Elk Grove area before, the exact same process. I do agree with the process being followed. We've gotten legal guidance and counsel to approach it in this manner. People far more experienced in the law than I, probably any of us in this room, not sure your occupations, but I would take that guidance, and I think that's good. I think the concerns around the future or use. This isn't designating what's going to be on that property, whether this is designating what could be in the future. I think in order to make this a viable place, a developer would want to come in, this is the right step to do that. It doesn't change the existing uses. We still have an existing conforming use. We still have an existing non-conforming use. There's probably greater environmental impact with the existing non-conforming use, right? So hopefully one day we could redevelop so we could improve that situation. I think the other point is it's a valid approach. I think it's well thought out. In my mind, I think all of our questions have been answered according to legal counsel, the advice given, or following the procedure. And last but not least, like any development on the proposed lot 2 would require it to come back, to build something there, to build a convalescent hospital or a I don't know, all the different uses, Mike, that you went through. We would have to review that, and that may be subject to CEQA, depending on what that potential future use by hopefully somebody coming in to invest money in the community of Plymouth would do. They would go through the process, and we may potentially look at that, right? We may have to go through that process. I'm not sure what that process is. I know they're looking at that with some other projects here in the city, but overall, I support the plan. So before we move to a vote, any other final comments? I know Mel, looks like you're ready to hit the button. Do you have a comment?
I just think that it's clarifying a lot for the public on what can or can't be done on that. And it gives them an idea on how to approach it with their aspect in mind, so that they can clarify it and get it straightened out much quicker and much easier for them and for the city. So I think it's a nice straightforward process that clarifies it a lot more than what I read on the early thing trying to get ready for this meeting. It clarified it for me, and I got some answers tonight at the meeting here to finish off my presentation on the thing here, and I'm really happy with it. Thank you.
All right, I suggest at this point, we move to a vote for the resolution number 2022-02, which is a resolution of the Planning
Excuse me,
Commission.
Mr. Chair, I think you need,
Oh.
did you close the public hearing? Did we vote to close the public hearing?
We don't vote, we acknowledge the public spoke.
Okay, I thought we had to close the public hearing. I apologize.
I think you could into the record say.
Okay, I'll put it into the record, the public hearing is now closed. Thank you for that clarification. All right, to restate, I think at this point, let's move forward with a vote regarding resolution number 2022-02, which is a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Plymouth recommending the City Council approve amending the general plan, land use designation and rezone properties located at 18725 Highway 49, APNs 0110-062-001 and 010-062-002. Assuming I don't have to read the rest of that resolution. All right, do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll make that motion that we had in the vote.
Do I have a second to move forward with the vote? Can I second myself?
Mhm.
Okay, I second it. We'll go ahead and move to a roll call vote.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Cozart,
Yes.
Commissioner Moreno,
No,
Vice Chair Sullivan,
No.
Chair Clapper.
Yes.
The vote is 2 yeses, 2 noes.
So the motion fails.
Motion fails.
Yep.
All right, we'll move forward with the rest of the agenda. All right, so there's no items under unfinished business, there's no new business. We'll go through reports. First, I just want to make a comment today. I know there was, we have the Plymouth ambassadors, and they did a nice cleanup right behind the property we just spoke about. They did a nice cleanup effort. So I want to recognize the city members of Plymouth that spent their valuable time today to go out and clean up the community. I think it's people like that that make a true difference. So thanks to them.
And I will second that.
There you go. All right, let's go with the planning director. Any additional concerns or comments?
Nope.
All right, city staff, any reports?
Not at this time.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Cosart, any additional report or concerns?
No other comments for me. Thank you.
Commissioner Sullivan?
I have a couple. First of all, I think there was a good point made with Ms. LeMay, who couldn't see the screen. Is it possible to do like we used to do with the projector at the same time and just kind of mirror whatever's on there so the public can see in the future? Or, I mean, that would probably be cheaper than buying a second screen, right?
Yes, that is possible.
All right. And the last comment I'd like to make is thanks to everybody for the work and input on everything. I wish Mr. Jaggers was coming forward with a proposal. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Moreno?
yes, I'd also like to thank the council and the public for making comments tonight and for the work that Aaron did put in putting this together and in answering Frank did answer some of the questions that I had. I'd like to propose that we figure out a way so that the questions and answers that we have as planning commissioners individually, I ask my questions of Aaron, I get a response. Mike or Bill or Mel make their questions and get a response, and that never makes it into the public view. That maybe staff could find a way that we can make sure that all of the commentary and questions that are answered do become a part of the public records so that everybody understands what we're basing our decision on. I think that's required as part of public hearing anyway, but so that it's clear in the record why we're making the decisions that we are. So if anybody
I'm gonna
agrees
say
with that,
something, I just need, we obviously try to get as much information into the public record as possible. So please give me your questions and comments as early as you can, because 4:51, right before the meeting, it's very hard to be able to answer these questions, especially when we're needing to check with city attorneys, additional attorneys, things like that. So I just really appreciate, and I understand there's circumstances that come up, but when the questions can get to me earlier so that I can get that information to everyone that needs the information.
Now, let me clarify, I don't think that if I ask a question of Aaron regarding an item that's on the agenda, that should be made a record of the public, because that's me inquiring to the director, maybe potentially another commissioner, or just a question. Generally, it's a question of clarification after reading material. So personally, I think we may need guidance or counsel on that.
And I have two quick questions on that. Is it possible to get the agenda packets earlier sometimes? I mean, because we didn't get it till close of business Monday. I mean, it is what it is. I know you guys have to have the attorney review it.
And there's legal requirements of when we get it out. We try to get it out as early as we can, and just depending on once it's been reviewed by who it needs to be reviewed by, but we can continue to try to get that out as earlier, because I know that 2-day turnaround, especially if you're not here in Plymouth all day, every day, can be hard to go visit the site and talk to people if you need to. So we will work on that the best we can.
Great. And second question, or maybe this is a city staff question too. Is it possible to get email addresses for planning commissioners? Because if we're asking questions by email using our personal email, that's really a great thing for public records and public access and everything else.
Yeah, we can look into that, because I know before we created a planning commission email, but obviously you guys aren't corresponding through that. That's where emails are coming to. So, if you can ask about creating specific emails for them.
Yeah, when I was getting ready for this meeting, I dug up some of my old documents of the meetings, because we had a couple of questions that were answered by previous discussions. And I found the registry of the people and phone numbers and emails. So that would be nice to have on our group here. Thank you very much. Oh, one other question. Jason Reynolds, I saw at the post office again today, his vacancy was supposed to have been filled last week by the city council, and we still don't have anything. Are we getting a replacement for that?
We are working on that.
Is it made
So
yet?
there was a timing, procedural timing thing. The council member did appoint somebody, but the timing was off by a couple days. So we have to go through the noticing period again. So it is noticed, and as far as I know, we have an interested party. Which as soon as our time is up and if the other applications are received, then that council member will review those applications and decide they will appoint to the planning commission. So hopefully by next month, we'll have another commissioner.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. Hearing no other comments or business, we'll move to adjourning the meeting of the City of Plymouth Planning Commission for February 17, 2022 at 7:30 p.m.